Out of every upcoming top level, which claims to be the hardest in the game, Angelicide is the one that I find the most interesting. I enjoy the song very ironically, and despite it evidently being possible for humans to beat, it doesn't look like it at all. So, determined to find out just how difficult it truly is, I contacted Extra 8 Nuggies in order to learn everything I needed to know about its difficulty. Before we get to analyzing this level's difficulty, I first need to clarify a few things. In this video, I will only be examining the difficulty of Druki's own version of the level, seeing as it's the hardest out of the three that people currently have progress on, and the one with the best progress on it. As such, many statements I make may not apply to the versions which are being verified by Kaza or Cookie. Also, I enjoy this level, so I have a slight bias that might make me overrate parts of its difficulty. But with that said, please like this video and subscribe with notifications turned on so you can be up to date on any future uploads on this channel. Starting with the pre-drop of the level, Druki said that this part wasn't very difficult for him. The beginning is very consistent to the point where even I, a person with electrodynamics as my hardest, can get runs on it. The difficulty then ramps up at 4% with this wave that forces you to do some very tight micro-releases, and then it's 6% with this abomination of a wave that requires even shorter releases. Then there's a slight drop in difficulty from 6 to 11%, however it still remains somewhat consistent.
This pre-drop has really tight waves. As you can see, I think this release is a 120. I'm pretty sure, because I've buffed it recently. So this release is a 120, and then it gets a bit easier, but it's still pretty tight, as you can see.
Arriving at 11%, we have one of the core reasons for why this level is so absurdly hard, that being the stamina it requires. Unlike other upcoming top ones such as Heliopolis that rely on relatively low or medium CPS with extremely hard timings, Angelicide has timings that you'd find in a high-end main list that you have to do at extremely high CPS. The level itself has an average CPS of 5.86, which doesn't sound that bad until you compare it to another spammy level. VSC, a level which is notoriously considered closer to a spam challenge due to having multiple spam sections, only averages 4.8 CPS. Aside from the fact that you have to do so many of these hard timings because of the amount of clicks, you also have to deal with the problem of your body getting extremely tired when you have to do longer runs. Because of the stamina issue, this means that anyone who gets far into the level is going to experience some level of precision loss, which combines in a very nasty way with some later parts. Going into the first drop, this part is considered even easier than 0 to 11%.
This part is really awkward, but really consistent. It's like either you're consistent and you pass it every time, or you just die to it because you can't get this part right. Not a lot of hard timing, just a lot of clicks, and a really awkward click pattern.
The beginning gets very consistent once you know what you're doing, but it can be really awkward otherwise. There's a slight spike in difficulty at the 16% mini wave and the UFO at 18%, both of which can be choke points early on. Then the wave at 19% brings up another factor of Angelicide's difficulty, that being the inconsistency. Due to the sheer amount of clicks there are on this level, plus the individual frame windows not being that tight, stuff like the 19% wave can become very RNG dependent because there's 1,000 ways to enter them. Lastly, 21% is extremely easy, lacking any timings or ultra high CPS. So easy in fact that Druki has admitted to using his left hand on this part whenever he gets to it from 0 because it's effectively a resting point.
This is free, bro. There's no timings in here. I've used my left hand to play this part sometimes, like from 0. I'll just use my left hand just to get a quick rest for my right hand because it's just that easy.
Surprisingly enough, despite the first 6% of this part being considered free by Druki, this is the third hardest part in the entire level, right behind the very next one. The UFO at the start can be somewhat tricky, but the double click is manageable. Then the difficulty stays somewhat low until 27%, where you have to do the worst 3 clicks ever, and then do this big wave section, which transitions into the most dog shit upside down mini wave ever made. Due to the awkwardness of the 28% mini wave and the fact you have to do these dumbass timings at 3x speed, it becomes a huge choke point. The robot section afterwards becomes quite easy, but the difficulty picks up again at the 33% mini wave where you have to do these very tight clicks and then transition into a big wave section where you just kind of have to guess where you have to click. From there, the rest of the part remains pretty easy. We finally arrived at the second hardest individual part of the entire level, and what I'd argue is the most recognizable section in the entirety of Angelicide. This is 37 to 48, also known as the 37 wave. We start off with this quite easy wave that Druki's fraudulent ass has somehow managed to die to twice.
And then we have the infamous 37 wave. I've died twice to this thing right here on the first click, but to be honest, it's really not that bad. I don't know why I died there.
Then we enter the actual wave, which is the 37% 4xp mini wave. It starts off easy in comparison to the second half, although the first half is somewhat easy compared to the second half, it being 36 seconds into a very difficult level, and right after the third hardest individual part means that you're probably going to lack the stamina required to click as precisely as this part requires. The short cube section in the middle is a bit of a breakpoint that then transitions into the most fun part of the entire level. Compared to the other two versions of Angelicide, this version's mini wave is the closest one to the one in the unnerfed version, which really cements Druki as the go to this level for me. Then this section ends with a somewhat easy last 3%. Honestly, this section reminds me very much of the second drop on Midas World by Iced Cave and the spam parts in that section. Even though the funny spam in Midas World requires higher CPS, I'd argue that the 37 wave is significantly harder due to multiple gravity changes, not being, glorified consistency, having much worse visibility, and forcing you to do curved spam. I'd even go so far as to say that the full wave is as hard as 68 to 90 on Midas World, which some people claim is harder than VSC. So if we go by most people's estimates that place VSC at around top 30 on the demon list, this 8.6 second section in the middle of the level is around top 25 difficulty by itself. And this is only the second hardest individual part in the level. People always talk about TS2, Slaughterhouse, and Succubant Circles having awful balancing, but the fact that this level's parts range from easy extreme gameplay like 0 to 4 and 21 to 23, all the way to something you'd see in a slightly spammier version of Eternus, is something that really needs to be addressed. The unbalanced gameplay also plays into this level's pre-existing lack of consistency, which Druki said makes this level even harder than it already was. Moving on, we have another part that Druki considers very easy for him. However, since he has a lot of experience with this part as it was the first part he played, he believes that it's probably right below 21 to 37 in terms of individual difficulty for most other people. The part at 50% is somewhat difficult due to the density of the clicks, but it's not the hardest thing ever. The wave afterwards starts off easy, but the last few clicks are very difficult due to the lack of visibility on some of them. Also, the dumb micro clicks and releases from the 6% wave are back with a vengeance. The next few parts are either pretty easy or required someone fast clicking until the very last input of the 58% wave.
So this wave is not that bad, but this last gap is supposed to be like this. In the original level, it's something like this, okay? So why did I buff it that much? It's because those 3 clicks are absolutely terrible. If you click later there, on here, your cube is actually like lower than you're supposed to be. It's like here, instead of here. So when it changes it just doesn't work. Like you just hit this saw. So I buffed it a lot, which kind of makes it choke points.
Right after that, we have the worst click in the entire level, which is the 240 FPS frame perfect. It doesn't show up in this showcase I recorded, so I'll just let this crazy French hobo explain why it's worse than the 3 frame in the beginning of Sonic Wave.
This is a 240, okay? I don't know if I'm gonna keep it.
Oh, you added a 240?
Maybe. It was a CBA frame perfect, but that's because I added that as a joke on stream, but then it was actually possible.
Yeah,
like runs were
I've seen
doable
that.
with this. I nerfed it to a 240. Oh my god, that is the worst sentence ever. I nerfed it to a 240. It's temporary, but I think I'm gonna leave it like close to that, okay?
I think NaN should probably be convinced about this being top 1 now that it has a 240 like literally everything else does, and the rest of this part is very, very easy.
I've seen someone make do you know NaN?
Yes.
He made a frame counter of this level, and he said something in the description like, "Yo, this level has not a lot of 120, so it's not top 1 or something like that." And he just completely ignored the fact that there's 540 clicks in the level. Yeah, I think that's it.
This is the very first part of a 3-part horror film that is 68 to 100. The duel at 65% can be very intimidating at first if you don't know the click pattern, but it otherwise becomes quite easy. Then the drop at 68% immediately picks up the difficulty. Although this part is somewhat easy by itself since it comes right after every part we've mentioned so far, your stamina is bound to be fucked, so it will become much harder in a theoretical run from zero. Starts off easy, then the dual wave at 70% spikes the difficulty quite a lot, as do the other wave sections up to 74%. This part also contains quite a few micros as well as double and triple clicks, which aren't very difficult to do on a run from 68, but I can only assume how impossible they've become with the nerves and the stamina issues of getting there on a completion attempt. This is only a hint at the sheer insanity of what 68 to 100 has to offer. Before I even get into anything else, I need to clarify that this is the hardest individual part of the entire level by a wide margin. I'd even go so far as to say that it's significantly harder than 72 to 91 of Thinking Space 2, which is the hardest part of that level and quite similar in length. It starts off with a pretty difficult wave, then a relatively easy dash warp spam. After the dash warp part, the CPS skyrockets to 9, which combines very well with the difficult wave control and cube that this part features. Right after that, you have another one of Angelicide's signature dogshit gameplay transitions with the dual UFO, where you have to do this weird double click that determines how you enter the wave right after. This acts as another click pattern check, which is very rough due to being at 84% on the top one. The aforementioned wave after the dual UFO is also the exact same as the wave at 6%, only way worse because it's so deep into the level. The next wave at 87 is admittedly quite easy. This part may not sound that bad, but considering everything we've established so far, it is absolutely absurd. The 37% mini wave was already ridiculously difficult, and Druki considers this part significantly harder, despite being much better at the second half of the level. I think that if the claim about 68 to 100 on Kaza's version being way harder than Acheron is true, and we assume that Druki's version is also significantly harder than Kaza's, it would not be illogical to assume that this 26-second part from 68 to 100 is around as hard as Subsuming Vortex or Killstealer, which is fucking absurd to say out loud. With 77 to 87 out of the way, we have cleared the last difficult part of this level. 87 to 100 is considered the easiest individual part of the level by Druki, which makes a lot of sense as it only has one hard part at 94%. Then 94 to 97 forces you to click very fast without any ultra difficult timings. Afterwards, you have this pretty easy wave and then the ending of the level. That's the entirety of Angelicide, analyzed part by part based on both the things Druki told me in our call and my own observations about the level. So the full ranking of all 8 parts individually goes as follows. In 8th place we have 87 to 100, since it only has one slightly difficult part that's also quite short. Then, in 7th place we have 11 to 21, which is very consistent for the most part and only has 2 slight choke points. Next up, we have 65 to 77, which is not very high on CPS and is quite easy if you are familiar with the click pattern. Then at 5th place we have the first 11%. The beginning is quite easy, but the waves at 4 and 6% as well as the spam at 10% are very stupid and taxing. Then in 4th place we have 48 to 65%. It's very consistent for Druki, but it contains multiple difficult sections as well as the only 240 FPS frame perfect the entire level. Taking the bronze medal for the 3rd hardest part in Angelicide, we have 21 to 37. It is quite easy for the most part, but it has 2 huge choke points at 27 and 31%. The runner-up for the hardest part is 37 to 48. I mean, yeah, this is pretty obvious. I already talked about it. This shit is top 30 on its own, and it's not even 9 seconds long, but it gets consistent, so I guess it's not really the hardest. In 1st place, like I said, we have 77 to 87%. I don't even fully understand how it's harder than 37 to 48, but if Druki says it's harder, it probably is harder. If all you cared about was seeing how hard the funny spam click sync level was, you may leave right here. But if you're an Angelicide hater who believes that it's easier than society and you're still watching this video, first off, thanks for considering my video engaging enough to watch all the way through to this part. Secondly, this part is for you. A very common argument I hear against Angelicide's difficulty is its lack of ultra difficult timings, mainly 1 and 2 frames. While this is true, you have to consider the fact that the sheer quantity of 4 through 6 frame timings and the fact that you have to do them at such a quick rate for the entire level more than makes up for that fact. Another argument against its difficulty is that top players could theoretically just use alternating in order to beat the spammy parts, like some have done with VSC. There's 3 problems with this argument. Firstly, this level is 6 times longer than VSC, with the spammy parts often lasting way longer than the 1-2 seconds you see in VSC. Secondly, this level is way faster and way less linear than VSC, which means that alternating through some parts would be extremely difficult for the average straight wave carried spammer. Thirdly, the hardest parts in the level, where you'd expect alternating to actually matter since it theoretically removes some of the precision in them, are tight enough that alt spamming through them would be genuinely impossible or just impractical. Arguing that they could just slow down the speed at which their alt spamming is also pointless, since the sheer dexterity required to do things like 77 to 81 with 2 hands isn't something I'd see as possible for humans right now. In conclusion, I truly believe that Angelicide is one of the hardest, if not the hardest, upcoming top 1 right now. Despite not having as many crazy timings as Grief or Cosmos Unleashed, it more than makes up for that fact by being way spammier, having way worse visibility, and not being an 80-second long consistency challenge with some mid-difficulty cube timings at the beginning and ending. Seriously, I hate Cosmos Unleashed so much you don't even understand. Anyway, I believe that most top players are going to struggle this level, since the hardest parts of the level are both tight enough to where alternating becomes either impossible or impractical, and fast enough to where the imperfections in their spam are going to become very apparent. It wouldn't be crazy to say that things like the 9 CPS spam and 77 to 87 are practically impossible for anyone that isn't these 6 people. If you liked this video, please leave a like, comment, and share it with anyone who might be interested. I would love to make more difficulty analysis videos like this, so if you could help me get in contact with other verifiers of upcoming top levels, that would be very lovely. Bye!